Any particular issue you're voting on this year that really motivated you?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm a little more left than Kamala.
Yeah.
Is,
Oh,
so
really?
there's
Okay.
A lot of things I wish that would be nice.
Yeah.
But I have, my own opinions about the general party overall. But,
Sure.
I mean, I just don't really like Trump for obvious reasons I
Yeah.
don't have to get into.
Of course.
Obvious reasons.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, if you know anyone else who hasn't voted yet, on Election Day they can vote at any polling place in the county,
Okay.
and they're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Lovely.
All right?
Okay.
Well, take
Have
care.
a good one.
See you.
Former Progress Texas President Ed Espinoza and current digital director Sam Gonzalez went block walking over the weekend in Austin. That was one of many nice folks they met in the run-up to Election Day, which is today. It's Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch. Rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. As you're hearing this, polls are open across Texas for the final day of voting in the 2024 election. You know what to do. And if you don't know what to do, find out what to do at govotetexas.org. We've also published a full list of our endorsed candidates for the 2024 election in Texas. That's at progresstexas.org and is also linked in our show notes this morning. Looking at the starting point for Election Day, our early voting stats, Juan Salinas II and Yuriko Schumacher at the Texas Tribune say that by raw numbers, overall turnout looks down from the last presidential cycle in 2020, but that's not a completely fair comparison given the extended voting period and the preponderance of mail-in voting that year due to the pandemic. A big drop-off in mail-in voting accounts for the majority of that change. Still, more than 9 million Texans have either voted in person during the 2 weeks of early voting or returned their absentee ballots on time. 48.6% of all registered. All things considered, a massive number. Unfortunately, the Trib says Democratic turnout appears to have lagged throughout the early voting period, a trend that was detected early on. However, what they refer to as fast-changing counties, meaning rapidly growing and ostensibly bluing counties like Tarrant, Fort Bend, Denton, Hays, and Williamson, are leading the charge percentage-wise with almost 55% average turnout, followed by the vast expanse of our rural and solid red counties, 216 of them by the Trib's count at just over half turnout, followed by the big blue counties, Harris, Baird, Dallas, and Travis at only 46.6%, bringing up the rear the traditionally blue but recently reddening border counties from El Paso to Cameron, quite low early turnout there at only 36.4%. CBS Texas notes that our early vote totals have surpassed the total votes eventually cast in the 2016 election. They talked to Ross Hunt at Hunt Research in Dallas about the early voting numbers, partly due to our explosive overall population growth since then. Hunt says Republican turnout is simply outpacing Democratic turnout this time in Texas, with Dems under 50 turning out at 20% lower than their prior performance, while the suburban and rural parts of red Texas are seeing the opposite. Dallas County, in particular, of the 5 biggest urban counties, is showing the weakest early turnout overall at just under 45%, but there's a silver lining in Dallas, as crunched by our friends at Ground Game Texas, who find both that voters under 35 in Dallas are outpacing their counterparts statewide by about 21%, which is significant, and that folks who have signed on to that org's cannabis decriminalization petitions have voted at 24% over Dallas's overall early turnout average. 5 things to watch this election day from the Texas Tribune. The performance of Donald Trump, who is expected to carry Texas, but a slimmer win than 2020, in which he prevailed by 5.6 points, would signal a continued long-term narrowing of Republican advantage in our state, which would help make the case for more significant national investment here in future elections. Greg Abbott's up in 2026, by the way. Similar and slimmer for the Senate race. Beto O'Rourke's less than 3-point loss to Ted Cruz in 2018 is almost hard to winnow down any further without actually winning. The super competitive South Texas races, especially those 2 rematches, Progress Texas endorsee Michelle Vallejo's second attempt to unseat Republican U.S. House Rep Monica de la Cruz and Democratic Congressman Vicente Gonzalez's fight to fend off Republican challenger and former House Rep Mayra Flores. Turnout is down in the Valley, as we mentioned, and Republicans have enjoyed recent momentum in the RGV. Races involving Republicans handpicked by Governor Abbott to help push private school vouchers through. Democrats are hoping voters in rural school districts will realize that voting Republican means voting against their own local public school funding. And the courts. Texas Supreme Court Justice John Devine, in particular, lousy with ethical issues, seems the most vulnerable against Democratic challenger Christine Weems. While the Republican candidates for the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals are all handpicked by Ken Paxton, who's looking to reshape that court in order to build the prosecutorial power of the Attorney General's office, specifically in the field of elections, which would be extremely bad news for Texas. Meanwhile, there's a conflict underway between the federal government and Ken Paxton over the Fed's plans to monitor the goings-on of Election Day in Texas and the count thereafter. Stephen Goen at KHOU TV in Houston says Harris County Democrats, who have actually requested that federal oversight, are at odds with Harris Republicans, who are in lockstep with Paxton and Texas Secretary of State Jay Nelson, who maintain that state law doesn't allow federal monitors, the kind of resistance commonly seen in faltering third-world democracies. Harris County Attorney Christian Menefee notes that federal presence during Texas elections isn't new, that they've been a regular feature of the process over the years, and that this resistance by Republicans is the story. Full report from KHOU linked in the show notes. Taylor Goldenstein at the Houston Chronicle elaborates that, as he does, Paxton has filed a last-second lawsuit to stop the U.S. Department of Justice from sending monitors into county polling locations today, part of a national trend of GOP-led states putting up blinders against the feds. Florida and Missouri are making similar moves. At the same time, Ken Paxton is sending out his own detachment of poll watchers who are allowed to hover over voters by current state law. Saul Elbein at The Hill says what Paxton calls an Election Day rapid response legal team has fanned out across Texas's major counties. His words, but that sounds like blue urban counties to me. Keep in mind the National Election Protection Hotline and don't hesitate to report any funny business you might encounter while voting today. That number is 866-OUR-VOTE or 866-687-8683. Here at Go Time, there's late heat coming Ted Cruz's way, perhaps too late. Sanford Nowlin at the San Antonio Current says the Federal Election Commission has contacted the Cruz re-election campaign to demand an explanation or return of nearly $1 million in campaign contributions they appear to have accepted in violation of federal law. The FEC has determined that nearly 200 third-quarter contributors to the Cruz campaign exceeded the federal limit of $3,300 for individuals. Nowlin isn't clear about whether this could provide cause for future legal action against Cruz by the Colin Allred campaign. By the way, Dallas voters, don't forget one last reminder of those cleverly worded hero amendments we've talked about. Props STNU, the first three letters in stupid, if passed, in the words of former Dallas Chief of Police David Brown, would, quote, spell doom for spending on street code compliance, library services, parks, economic development, and other vital city services, unquote, says CBS News. Here at Progress Texas, we're tired, and you're tired. But we remind you that regardless of the results this week, the fight for reproductive justice, a clean environment, fair elections, good schools, and so many other things we consider just basic common sense will continue regardless of who wins this week. Head to ProgressTexas.org to find out how to join us as we continue to unify progressive Texans in the ongoing push for positive change and the fight for what's right in the Lone Star State. Our holiday parties for this year in Austin on December 3rd and Dallas on December 16th are a great way to start. Both fundraising events for the fight beyond this election into the next Texas legislative session. We need your help to continue this important work, and party sponsorships are available now. Thanks so much to Progress Texas board members Charles Zeller and the Honorable Dick Levine for their holiday party contributions. We look forward to seeing both of y'all this December. Our listeners form a key component of our funding here at Progress Texas, so if you're a regular and you're liking what we do, we could use your support as a monthly contributor. No amount is too small. Go to ProgressTexas.org/donate to find out how you can help, and thank you so much. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day. Happy voting, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning.